So, this all went down at my wedding a few weeks ago, and I honestly do not know how to feel about it anymore. Some of my friends are saying I did the funniest and most iconic thing ever. Others are saying I was super petty and basically ruined my own wedding vibe. I'm stuck between being proud of myself and wondering if I was the one who made everything worse. So here goes the whole messy story. From the very beginning of my relationship with my now husband, Neil, 30 male, his mom, Aria, 59 female, and I have never really gotten along. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm perfect, but I've always made an effort to be polite and respectful. She, on the other hand, has always been one of those people who feels like no woman will ever be good enough for her son. You know the type. The I raised him, I sacrificed everything, and now you're stealing him from me mindset. I thought that once we got engaged, she would soften up a bit and maybe be happy for us, but instead she ramped up her behavior. Planning a wedding is stressful enough, but planning a wedding with a mother in law who thinks she should be the bride is another level of stress I was not prepared for. From the moment we announced our engagement, she started inserting herself into everything. She wanted to pick the colors, she wanted to choose the food, she even tried to dictate who would be invited. If I said I liked something, she said it was tacky. If I said I did not like something, she said I was being unreasonable. At first, I tried to include her so she wouldn't feel excluded, but quickly I realized that the more input she had, the more controlling she became. I should also mention that she would send me these little friendly voice notes on my phone, which were not friendly at all. They were basically disguised insults. Stuff like, just some advice, or just trying to help. But really, she was tearing me down. She would tell me my taste was embarrassing, that I was trying too hard, that I did not understand what was classy, that my family was not contributing enough, and on and on. I would literally cry after listening to some of them, but kept them. Part of me thought maybe one day I'd want to show my husband just how nasty she could be when he was not around. Anyway, flash forward to the actual wedding day. Despite all the drama during planning, I was genuinely excited and ready to marry the man I love. Everything looked beautiful. The venue was perfect. My dress made me feel amazing. And even though I was stressed, I felt like it was going to be the best day ever. I had written my vows, and I was a little nervous about reading them out loud because I'm an emotional person. I cry easily. Movies, commercials, sad songs, happy moments, everything. So I knew I would cry while reading my vows. Sure enough, when the time came, I got emotional. I started tearing up. My voice cracked a few times while I was speaking. I didn't care though, because those words were from my heart and I was looking at my future husband and meaning every word. Apparently, my mother in law did not appreciate that. Later, she told me it was embarrassing and that I was trying too hard to be the center of attention on a day where she felt she should have the spotlight because, in her words, she was giving the love of her life away. Yes, she literally said that to me. At first, I just laughed it off because I thought, okay, this is just more of her being ridiculous. But then she decided to actually make a little moment for herself. During the reception, she went around to tables making these dramatic little speeches about how hard it was to let go of her son, how she raised him alone. Not true. Her husband is very much in the picture. How she hoped I realized what a gift I was being given. It was like she wanted the guests to cry for her, not us. Some people humored her, but most just looked uncomfortable. That's when I made a decision. I did not plan it in advance, but I remembered those voice notes she'd sent me during the wedding planning. I had saved them on my phone, and I had actually shared a couple with my DJ as kind of a joke during a late night vent session. He thought they were insane. So I went up to him and said, "Play the thing." He knew exactly what I meant. So while she was still in her self-appointed spotlight moment, the DJ cut the music and played one of the voice notes over the speakers. And not just any voice note. It was one where she was absolutely trashing me. She called me tacky, said I was trying to buy her son, said I was cheap, and said I would never be good enough for him. Her voice was loud and clear, echoing through the room. You could have heard a pin drop when it started playing. I stood there and let it happen. I did not say a word. I did not need to. Everyone in that room could hear her in her own words. My husband's face went white. My family looked horrified. Some of the guests were staring at her with their mouths open. And she froze. For the first time since I met her, she had nothing to say. She just sat there, red in the face, and did not move. The DJ stopped it after about 30 seconds because it was getting too uncomfortable. But honestly, the damage was already done. She did not try to make another speech after that. She stayed in her seat for the rest of the night, looking miserable. People definitely gave her side eye, and a couple of guests came up to me privately and said they couldn't believe she had actually said those things to me. Now, here's where I am conflicted. On one hand, I feel like she completely asked for it. She had been tearing me down for months. She made my wedding day about herself, and she openly insulted me for crying during my vows. So yeah, I wanted to put her in her place, and I did. On the other hand, some of my relatives told me afterwards that it was really inappropriate to play that during the wedding. They said it made the whole room uncomfortable, that I shouldn't have stooped to her level, and that I basically hijacked my own wedding with drama. Even my husband has mixed feelings. He was furious at his mom for sending me those messages and saying all those things. But he also said he wished I hadn't chosen that moment to expose her. He said he did not want our wedding day to be remembered for that. I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, I do not think anyone who was there will ever forget the way she looked when her own words came back to bite her. Since the wedding, she's been playing the victim hardcore. She's telling people I humiliated her on purpose, that I've driven a wedge in the family. Some relatives are taking her side, saying I should have been the bigger person and ignored her behavior. Others are on my side, saying she deserved it and I just gave her exactly what she asked for by insisting on being the center of attention. Honestly, I do not even know how I feel. Part of me feels bad because it was such a public takedown. And I do not usually like confrontation like that. Another part of me feels like it was the only way to get her to shut up and see how toxic she had been. She humiliated me so many times privately. So why shouldn't she feel what that's like in front of others? So yeah, that's what happened. I do not know if I was the villain or the hero of my own wedding, and it's been eating at me. AITA for playing a voice note of my mother-in-law trashing me during my wedding reception after she said I embarrassed her by crying during my vows. Update 1. A lot of people asked in the comments how my mother-in-law and I were before the wedding and why I even had those voice notes saved in the first place. Honestly, the wedding drama was just the peak of a much longer situation that started the very first day I met her. When my husband, then boyfriend, first introduced me to his mom, she did not even try to hide the fact that she was not thrilled about me. I walked into her house with flowers and a little dessert I had picked up from a bakery because my mom raised me to never show up empty-handed. She took one look at the dessert and said she was not really a sweets person. Then she gave me this once-over look that made me feel like I was being inspected at the DMV. Not a smile, not a welcome, nothing. It was like she was already annoyed I existed. During that first meeting, she spent the entire dinner talking about her son, his grades, his sports, his childhood achievements, like she was listing out his resume. I barely got a question about myself. When I tried to chime in, she cut me off and changed the subject back to him. I laughed it off at the time because I thought maybe she was just shy or protective, but nope, that was just her personality toward me. Over the next few months, she started with these small jabs that were easy to miss, unless you really listened. If I cooked something, she'd joke about how my husband might starve if that was what I fed him. If I wore something nice, she'd point out how much better a different color would look on me. She never came right out and said, "I do not like you," but she said it in 1,000 little ways. When things started getting serious between me and my husband, she ramped up. I'll never forget when he told her he was thinking about proposing. I was not there for that conversation, but according to him, she burst into tears and told him he was abandoning her. When he finally did propose and we announced it, she put on a fake smile in public, but privately told him we were moving too fast and that I was only after stability, which was hilarious because we were both broke grad students at the time. There was no stability to be after. Then came the wedding planning stage, which is when she really hit her stride. She inserted herself into every decision. She wanted to invite distant cousins my husband hadn't spoken to in a decade. She wanted me to change my dress to something more appropriate. Her idea of appropriate was basically a long white prom gown from the early 90s. She even sent me links to rings after we were already engaged, like she thought he should have proposed with something she approved of instead. This is also when the voice notes started. At first they were disguised as helpful advice. Stuff like, "Sweetie, I do not think gold flatware is very classy. Silver's better. Just saying." Or, "Not everyone looks good in a fitted dress. Maybe you should reconsider before the pictures last forever." But then they started getting darker. "You know, some people think crying at vows is just a way of making yourself the star of the show. You do not come from a family like ours, so maybe you do not understand what's traditional. My son is the catch here, so you should be careful not to embarrass him." That last one is one of the recordings I kept because it honestly knocked the wind out of me when I first heard it. I did not respond to her directly. I just told my husband that his mom was being stressful without playing him the actual recordings at the time. I didn't want to seem like I was trying to turn him against her, but I wanted him to know she was making things harder for me. So, to everyone wondering how it got to the point where I let the DJ play one of her messages at the reception, it was not just one little thing. It was years of build-up. Starting from the very first time she looked me up and down in her kitchen and decided I was not good enough. By the time the wedding day came around and she started calling me embarrassing for crying during my vows, I think something in me just snapped. Honestly, seeing her face when her own words came out of the speakers, I do not regret it. Maybe I should. Maybe it was not the mature thing to do, but it was the first time in years she did not have something snide to say back. Update 2. So I did not expect to be coming back with more, but a lot has happened since the wedding. If the reception was the climax, the aftermath has been the fallout, and honestly, it's been a mix of comedy and headache because my mother-in-law is not the type of person who can just let something go quietly. First off, she did not speak to me at all after the reception, like literally 0 words. She sulked in her chair, left early, and then ignored me completely when we were saying goodbye to guests. I thought maybe she just needed time to cool off, but nope. The silent treatment turned into a full-on campaign. Within a few days, she was on the phone with relatives telling them I had publicly humiliated her for no reason. She left out the part where she has been sending me those nasty recordings for months, of course. My husband got dragged into it right away. She started blowing up his phone, crying and saying she couldn't believe he let me do that, asking him how he could betray his own mother like that. She even tried the guilt card by reminding him of times she raised him all alone. Again, his dad has always been around. He got so frustrated he finally just muted her for a week. That was huge, because I've never seen him set a boundary like that before. Then she tried a new tactic, the fake apology. She sent me this long message that basically said she was sorry if I misunderstood her intentions, and that she was just trying to make sure our wedding lived up to family standards. Which is not an apology, that's just her saying, I was right, but you were too sensitive. I did not respond because I honestly did not know what to say. The weirdest part, though, has been the split in the family. Some people are firmly on my side. They either heard the recording or they've seen how she acts towards me and weren't surprised. Others are on her side, saying it was cruel to play the message in public, that I should have handled it privately. It's created this awkward tension where holidays and family events already feel like landmines, and we're barely a month into marriage. The kicker? She has now decided she's too hurt to be around us. But instead of just staying away, she makes sure everyone knows she's choosing distance. She skipped a cousin's birthday party but texted the entire family group chat to say she would have loved to be there if certain people hadn't pushed her out. She posts cryptic stuff on Facebook about losing a son when he gains a wife. She thrives on making everything dramatic. My husband and I have talked a lot about it, and he's honestly been amazing. He told me he finally sees how much I was putting up with and how manipulative she can be. He admitted he used to downplay it because it was easier than facing how toxic it really was. Now he's being more protective of me and more firm with her, which I appreciate. But it's also sad because I know he never pictured starting married life with his mom basically on the outs. As for me, I feel lighter in a way. For so long she had this power over me, like every word she said mattered. Now that it's out in the open, I don't feel scared of her anymore. She already showed everyone who she really is when that voice note played. She can spin the story however she wants, but deep down, I think most people know the truth. Still, part of me wonders if I poured gasoline on a fire that could have just burned itself out. Like, if I hadn't done that, maybe she would have just embarrassed herself with her speeches and people would have rolled their eyes and moved on. Now it feels like this giant family feud with me in the middle. So yeah, that's where we're at now. She's sulking. The family is split. My husband and I are stronger as a couple, but dealing with drama we did not ask for. And I keep going back and forth between feeling vindicated and feeling like maybe I poked the bear too hard. Update 3. So yeah, she couldn't stay quiet for long. I kind of knew she wouldn't. Silence is not my mother-in-law's natural state. She lives for the performance of being wronged. And apparently the reception fallout was just her intermission. After her little Facebook pity tour and the I am choosing distance phase, she decided it was time for her grand comeback, and of course she chose the worst possible timing, our first big holiday as a married couple. We had agreed to split time between both families, and honestly, I was already dreading dealing with her. My husband and I had talked it over and decided if she started anything, we'd leave. No drama, no fight, just gather our stuff and go. Simple, right? Well, that plan did not even survive the appetizers. We walked into his parents' house and immediately it felt like a setup. She had decorated the entire place in this over-the-top family legacy theme. Old photo albums, framed baby pictures of my husband, even a slideshow playing on the TV of his childhood milestones. There was literally not a single picture of me or us as a couple anywhere in sight. It was like she wanted to remind me I was just a guest in her family. The second we sat down, she launched into her act. She gave this big speech about how holidays are about forgiveness and togetherness, and how she was willing to put the past behind us for the sake of the family. Except she never actually apologized for anything. It was all framed like I had wronged her, and she was being the bigger person by allowing me back into the fold. Then, as if that was not enough, she pulled out a gift bag and handed it to me in front of everyone. Inside was a cookbook titled How to Be a Good Wife. I wish I was joking. And tucked inside the front cover was a handwritten note that said something like, "Maybe this will help you feel more confident as a wife and hostess." I just sat there. My jaw literally dropped. My husband immediately grabbed the book, closed it, and told her that was inappropriate. She tried to play it off as a joke, but you could tell she was testing me, waiting to see if I'd react and make a scene in front of everyone. I did not. I just smiled tightly, set the book aside, and went back to my plate. And honestly, that seemed to make her even angrier than if I had called her out, because the rest of the evening she was sulking and whispering to her sister at the other end of the table. The funny thing is, her little stunt kind of backfired. A few relatives who had been on the fence about whose side to take actually pulled me aside afterwards and apologized for doubting me. They said they had no idea she was still being that petty and cruel after everything, and that they finally understood why I snapped at the wedding. So in a way, she just proved my point for me. But it also made me realize this isn't going to stop. This is her game. She's been playing it for years. If it's not one thing, it'll be another. She's always going to find a way to make me the villain and herself the victim. The one good thing to come out of it, my husband finally said the words I've been waiting to hear. We do not have to keep putting ourselves through this. He told me he wants to start setting serious boundaries, like hosting holidays ourselves or just skipping ones we know will be toxic. He even said he doesn't care if his mom disowns him because, in his words, I already chose my family when I married you. I may have cried a little at that one. So yeah, that's the latest. She tried her little power play with the cookbook. It backfired and now she's stewing. I'm sure she's already planning her next move because she's not the type to give up. But at least now my husband is 100% on the same page with me, which makes me feel less alone in this. I'll update again if, let's be real, when she pulls her next stunt. Update 4. So she escalated because of course she did. I swear my mother-in-law treats this whole thing like a competition she refuses to lose. After the holiday cookbook stunt blew up in her face, she went quiet for about a month. No calls, no messages, nothing. My husband and I actually started to relax. We thought maybe she'd finally backed off. We were wrong. She was just regrouping. We had decided to host a small get-together at our house, nothing huge, just a casual game night with some friends and a couple of my husband's cousins. We did not invite her, not because we were trying to exclude her, but because it was not a family event. Plus, after the cookbook thing, I honestly did not want her energy in my space. Well, guess who showed up anyway? Yep. She literally showed up at our door with a tray of cookies, smiling like she'd been invited. My husband froze when he saw her, and I just stood there with that fake smile you put on when you're in shock. She breezed past us like she owned the place, saying she was just in the neighborhood. Mind you, she lives 40 minutes away. The whole night turned into her show. She kept interrupting conversations to bring up my husband's childhood stories, loudly commenting on how different our house was from what she would have chosen, making little digs about how she did not realize we were keeping family at arm's length now. But the part that really got me, at one point, I stepped into the kitchen to grab drinks and she followed me. She leaned against the counter and, in this very calm, almost rehearsed voice, told me that I had embarrassed her in front of everyone at the wedding, that I had humiliated her again at the holiday dinner by not appreciating her gift, and that if I kept alienating her, I was going to lose the family. She did not yell, she did not even sound angry, she sounded smug, like she thought she had all the power. I did not respond. I just handed her a drink and walked back into the living room. Later that night, when my husband asked why I was so quiet, I finally told him what she'd said. He was furious, not just annoyed, but furious. He called her the next day and told her that showing up uninvited was unacceptable, that she was not welcome in our home until she learned how to respect both of us, and that if she kept trying to undermine our marriage, she was going to see a lot less of him. I could hear her screeching through the phone even though I was not on speaker. Now she's on her I'm the victim tour again. She's been calling relatives saying I've turned her son against her, that I'm trying to cut her off, and that she's being excluded from her own family. She even sent my husband this dramatic text that said, "You've chosen her over me, and one day you'll regret it." The wild part? Some relatives are actually starting to get sick of her antics. A couple of them reached out to us privately and said they're tired of being dragged into her pity campaigns. They told us to ignore her, that everyone sees through the act now, and that she's only hurting herself. And honestly, I think that's true. Every time she pulls something like this, more people get fed up. It's like she's digging her own hole. And instead of climbing out, she's asking for a bigger shovel. But it's exhausting. I do not like being the center of drama, and I hate that my marriage started off with this circus. At the same time, I feel like we've reached a point where she either changes or she loses us completely, and knowing her, I do not think she'll change. So yeah, that's the latest. She crashed our night, tried to pull her manipulative "you lose the family" line, and ended up getting banned from our house. My husband's finally seeing her for who she really is, but I know this isn't the end. It never is with her. Update 5. Okay, this will probably be my last update because honestly, I'm tired. Tired of writing about it, tired of living it, just tired. But a lot of people have followed this saga from the wedding post to now. So here's how it all came to a head. After the showing up uninvited incident, things got pretty quiet for a while. She was not texting, she was not calling, she was not posting cryptic stuff on Facebook. At first I thought she was just regrouping again, but nope. This time she was planning her grand finale. About a month ago, my husband got a call in the middle of the night. It was his dad, saying his mom was in the hospital. Of course, we panicked and rushed over there. When we arrived, she was sitting up in bed, perfectly fine, chatting with a nurse. Turns out she had gone in for chest pain, but all her tests were normal. The doctor even said it was likely just stress. But the moment she saw us, she burst into tears and went on about how the stress of losing her son was literally breaking her heart. She made this whole scene about how she did not want to die without reconciling, how she forgave me for humiliating her, how she just wanted her family back. And I'll admit, part of me felt guilty, like maybe I had gone too far. Maybe she really did feel hurt. Maybe I should be the bigger person, but then as soon as the nurse left the room, she leaned over to my husband and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "She'll never love you the way I do." That was it for me. All the guilt evaporated. I realized this was not about reconciliation. It was just another manipulation, another performance. My husband must have realized the same thing because he stood up, told her he loved her, but was not going to play this game anymore, and walked out. I followed him, and we haven't looked back. Since then, she's been on what I can only describe as a smear campaign. She's telling anyone who will listen that I'm controlling, that I'm jealous of their bond, that I've isolated her son. Some people still take the bait, but honestly, most are over it. They've seen enough. They know. And here's the thing, for the first time since I met her, I do not care, truly. I used to obsess over what she said about me, whether people believed her, whether I was doing enough to win her over. But I'm done. My husband and I are happy. We've started talking about buying a house, starting a family, building our life, and she can either come around someday and be part of it, or she can sit in her bitterness. That's her choice, not mine. So yeah, that's the end of it, at least for me. Thanks to everyone who's followed along. Stay tuned